The academy bully targeted a human girl. The instructor stopped the fight too. Late, Machen stood at the entrance of the Galactic Unity Academy and felt very small. The building rose above her like a mountain made of glass and white stone. Ships flew overhead carrying students from dozens of different worlds. Some of those students were taller than trees. Some had scales or wings or more arms than she could count. And here she was, just a human girl from Earth, 17 years old alone. She had worked so hard to get here, 3 years of studying every night until her eyes burned. Tests that covered mathematics and science and history from 100 different civilizations. She had scored higher than 10,000 other applicants from across the coalition. But none of that seemed to matter now as she walked through the main gates and felt the stares of alien students following her every step. Humanity had joined the Galactic Coalition only 8 years ago. In the long history of space travel, that was nothing. Most species here had been sailing between stars for thousands of years. They had built empires and fought wars and signed treaties before humans even discovered fire. To them, Earth was a backwater planet filled with primitive creatures who had somehow stumbled into space travel by accident. May was one of only 3 humans at the academy this year. The other 2 were older boys who had arrived a week before her. She had not met them yet. She wondered if they felt as lost as she did. A large creature blocked her path. He stood nearly 3 m tall, with dark green scales covering his entire body. His eyes were yellow with black slits in the center. When he smiled, she saw a row of teeth that looked sharp enough to cut steel. "Another human," he said. His voice was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. "I heard they were letting your kind in." Now, I did not believe it until I saw it with my own eyes. May looked up at him and kept her face calm. "Excuse me, I need to find my quarters." "Your quarters?" He laughed and looked at the group of students gathering behind him. They were all large, all scaled, all watching her with the same cold amusement. "The little human has quarters. Now, next they will give quarters to the cleaning robots." The other students laughed. May said nothing. She stepped around the large creature and kept walking. She heard more laughter behind her, but she did not look back. Her father had warned her about this before she left Earth. He had sat with her in their small apartment and spoken very seriously. "You will face hatred," he had said. "You will face creatures who think you are beneath them. You will want to fight back. You will want to prove them wrong, but you must not. You must endure." Every human at that academy carries the reputation of our entire species. If you fight, they will say humans are violent. If you fail, they will say humans are stupid. You must succeed quietly. You must give them no excuse to dismiss us. So May endured. She found her quarters, a small room with a bed and a desk and a window that looked out over the training fields. Below, other students had rooms twice this size. She did not complain. She unpacked her few belongings and began to study the schedule she had been given. The first week passed in a blur of classes and tests and long nights spent memorizing things she had never heard of before: coalition history, diplomatic protocols, the basics of ship navigation. Her mind docked from the effort of learning so much so quickly. But she kept going. She had no other choice. The problem started on the 8th day. She returned to her quarters after evening classes and found her door hanging open. Inside, everything she own had been destroyed, her clothes were torn, her books were burned. Her personal tablet was crushed into pieces. On the floor, on the wall, someone had written a message in large, ugly letters. Go home, animal. May stood in the doorway and looked at the destruction. She felt something hot rise in her chest, anger, real anger, the kind that made her hands shake and her vision blur. She wanted to scream. She wanted to find whoever did this and make them pay. Instead, she took a deep breath, then another, then she walked inside and began cleaning up the mess. She did not report it. She knew who was responsible, the large-scaled creature who had blocked her path on the first day. His name was Reason, and he was the son of a Tarian noble family. The Tarians had conquered 12 worlds before the coalition forced them to stop. They were warriors by culture and by blood. They believed strength was the only thing that mattered. Vria ruled the first-year students through fear. He had a group of followers who did whatever he commanded. They bullied anyone they saw as weak. They took food from smaller students. They broke belongings and laughed about it. The instructors knew, but did nothing. Tarian nobles had powerful connections. It was easier to look the other way. May learned all this from whispered conversations in the dining hall. She learned that Bria's family had lost significant status when humans joined the coalition. Apparently, Earth had negotiated a treaty that freed 2 species from Tarian control. The Sauron family blamed humanity for their fall, and now Va had found a human he could punish. The harassment continued. Her new clothes were stolen. Her meals were contaminated with substances that made her sick for days. Her assignments disappeared from the academy computer system, and she had to redo them from memory. Each time she reported nothing. Each time she simply fixed what was broken and kept moving forward. Other students noticed. A few seemed sympathetic, but none offered help. Helping a human meant making an enemy of Rexhorn. Nobody wanted that. One night, May sat alone in the library, studying for an exam. A shadow fell across her table. She looked up and saw Ria standing over her with his usual smile. Working hard, little human. Yes, it will not help you. He leaned closer. His breath smelled like rotting meat. Tomorrow is combat training. Instructor Ven assigns sparring partners randomly, but sometimes he takes requests. The smile grew wider. I requested you. May felt her heart beat faster, but she kept her voice steady. I see. The whole academy will be watching. They will see what humans really are. Weak, soft, pathetic. He reached down and grabbed her tablet, crushing it in his massive hand like it was made of paper. Try to rest tonight, little human. You will need your strength. He walked away laughing. His followers laughed with him. May sat very still for a long time. She thought about what her father had said. Endure, give them no excuse, carry the reputation of humanity on your shoulders and do not let it fall. But there was another voice in her head now, the voice of her grandmother, who had taught her things her father did not know about, things passed down through generations of her family, things that had nothing to do with endurance. You are small, her grandmother had said once long ago. You will always be small, smaller than they bullies at school, smaller than they dangers in this world. But small does not mean helpless. Small means you must be clever. Small means you must learn where to strike so that size does not matter. May had learned from the age of 6. She had learned pressure points, Joint locks, nerve clusters, the places where the human body was fragile and the places where other bodies were fragile. 2. Her grandmother had been a master of arts that were old when human civilization was young. She had passed that knowledge to May drop by drop over many years. No one at the academy knew this, not even the other humans. It had not seemed important before. She was here to study and learn and make humanity proud through academic achievement. Fighting was not part of the plan, but now Va had forced her hand. May picked up the pieces of her crushed tablet and threw them in the recycling unit. Then she returned to her quarters and lay down on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow she would face a creature 3 times her size in front of the entire academy. The instructor would stop the fight when one side was clearly beat. That was the rule. Vria would try to hurt her badly. Before that happened, he might try to her. He might try to kill her. She thought about her options. She could refuse to fight and face punishment for cowardice. She could fight and lose and prove what Ria wanted to prove about humans, or she could do something else, something that would change everything. May closed her eyes and began to breathe slowly. In her mind, she walked through the movements her grandmother had taught her, the gentle touches that cause so much pain, the precise angles that lock joints and severed nerve connection, the strikes that could disable or kill, depending on how much force she chose to use. She did not sleep that night. She did not need to. Her body was calm and her mind was clear. Tomorrow would bring what tomorrow would bring. In another part of the academy, Instructor Ven reviewed the sparring assignments for the morning session. He saw Bria's name paired with the human girl and smiled slightly. He had approved the request. Personally, Ven was Corvathia species, known for their warrior traditions. He had fought in 3 major conflicts. Before taking this teaching position, he had no respect for humans. They were physically unimpressive and culturally strange. He did not understand why the coalition had granted them membership. This would be educational, he thought. The human would learn her place. Other students would see what happened when weakness faced strength, and maybe after this, the academy would think twice about accepting more humans. He turned off his console and went to sleep, looking forward to the morning. The training hall was the largest room in the academy. It could hold 500 students easily. Today it seemed like all 500 were present. Word had spread through the dormitories like fire. Through dry grass, the Tothian noble was going to fight the human girl. Everyone wanted to watch. May walked through the entrance and felt the weight of all those eyes upon her. Creatures of every shape and size lined the walls and filled the observation balconies above. Some whispered to each other, some pointed, some laughed. She ignored them all and walked to the center of the training floor where the other first-year students were gathering. Fra was already there. He stood apart from the others, surrounded by his followers. When he saw May, his yellow eyes lit up with cruel pleasure. He did not say anything. He did not need to. His expression said everything. Instructor Ven entered through a side door and strode to the center of the floor. He was tall and lean, with gray skin and 4 arms that ended in hands with too many fingers. His voice was sharp when he spoke. Today, we continue basic sparring exercises. You will fight one-on-one until submission or knockout. I will stop each match when one party is clearly Defeated, his eyes swept across the student. There will be no serious injuries. Anyone who causes permanent harm to sparring partner will face immediate expulsion. Some students nodded, others shifted nervously. May kept her face blank and her body still. Then began calling out pairs. 2 Korvathi students stepped forward and fought a brief technical match that ended in submission. A Thesson and Aver traded blows until the Thesson was knocked down. Match after match proceeded while the crowd grew restless. They were waiting for the main event. Finally, Vin called out the names everyone had been expecting: Vria Sa and Mei Chen. A murmur ran through the crowd. Vria stepped forward with his chest swelled and his scales gleaming. Under the training lights, he was enormous. His arms were as thick as Mei's entire body. His claws looked capable of tearing through metal. Mei stepped forward. She looked tiny next to him, fragile like something that would break at the slightest touch. This seems unfair, said a voice from the crowd. Mei did not see who spoke. Then turned toward the voice. Humans demanded equal treatment at this academy. Equal treatment means no special considerations. If the human cannot compete, perhaps humans should not be here. More laughter. Ria grinned wider. Mei raised her hand. Instructor Ven Mei, I declined this match. Silence fell over the hall. Even Ria looked surprised. Ven walked toward her slowly. He looked down at her with something like disgust. You may not. This is not a choice. This is training. All students must participate. I understand. Mei lowered her hand. I wanted to give you the chance to reconsider. The chance to reconsider. Ren's voice dripped with contempt. Perhaps you should reconsider your presence at this academy. He walked back to the edge of the training circle. Standard rules begin when ready. Ria crouched into a fighting stance, his muscles tense beneath his scales. He looked like a predator about to pounce on wounded prey. Mei stood still. Her arms hung loose at her sides. Her feet were positioned in a way that looked careless but was not. Her breathing slowed until it was barely visible. Look at her, someone said from the crowd. She is frozen with fear. Va charged. He moved fast for something so large. His feet thundered against the training floor. His arms spread wide to grab her and crush her against his armored chest. It was the kind of attack that worked against almost everyone. Overwhelming force, no escape. Mei stepped to the side. It looked simple, almost lazy. One moment she was in his path and the next moment she was not. Bria's arms closed on empty air. His momentum carried him forward and he stumbled before catching himself. The crowd went quiet. Bria turned and attacked again. This time he swung his massive fist in a wide arc, aimed at her head. The blow would have cracked stone. Mei ducked under it and moved past him. Her hand clears throat, brushing lightly against his arm as she went. To the watchers, it looked like she had simply avoided the strike, but Va felt something strange, a tingling numbness in his arm that faded after a moment. He growled and attacked faster, punch after punch, grab after grab. Each time Mei was somewhere else, she flowed around his attacks like water around a stone. She never struck back. She never even raised her hands in defense. She simply was not there when his blows arrived. 1 minute passed, then 2. Bria was breathing hard now. Sweat glistened on his scales. The frustration on his face was turning into something uglier, rage. Stand still and fight, he roared. May said nothing. She continued to move in those small, careful ways that kept her just out of reach. In the crowd, students began to whisper. This was not what they expected. The human should have been broken by now. She should have been crying and begging for mercy. Instead, she was making one of the Academy's most feared bullies look foolish. Bria's attacks grew wilder, more vicious. He stopped trying to grab her and started trying to hurt her. His claws came out fully extended. He aimed for her throat, her eyes, her chest. These were not sparring techniques. These were killing strikes. From the edge of the circle, Instructor then watched with narrowed eyes. He should stop the match. Vria was clearly violating the rules, but something held him back. Curiosity perhaps, or something darker. He wanted to see what happened when the human finally made a mistake. May saw the change in Ria's attacks. She understood what it meant. He was no longer trying to win. He was trying to murder her in front of 500 witnesses, and the Instructor was doing nothing. She had hoped it would not come to this. She had given them every chance to end this peacefully. She had asked to decline. She had avoided every attack without striking back. She had been as gentle as she could possibly be, but gentleness had limits. Ria lunged again, both arms reaching for her neck. May stepped back and felt her heel touch the edge of the training circle. Nowhere left to retreat. Ria saw this in his eyes blazed with triumph. Finally he snarled. He grabbed her left arm. His grip was crushing. She felt the bones grinding together under the pressure. This was it. He would slam her to the ground and stomp on her until she stopped moving. The Instructor would stop the fight eventually. Maybe, or maybe not. Bria lifted her off the ground by her arm. The pain was extraordinary, but May did not scream. She let herself hang there for half a second while he pulled back his other arm for the finishing blow. Then she moved. Her free hand shot out and touched a spot on the inside of his elbow. It was not a punch. It was barely a tap, but Ria's arm went numb instantly, and his grip released. May dropped to the ground and rolled between his legs as his fist swung through empty space. She came up behind him and touched two more points in rapid succession, one at the back of his knee, one at the base of his spine. Vria made a strange sound. His legs buckled. He fell forward onto his hands and knees, unable to understand why his body was not responding. What did you do? His voice was confused now, rather than angry. May circled around to face him. Her expression was calm, almost sad. Your nervous system has pressure points, she said quietly. Most species do. Locations vary, but the principle is the same. Strike the right point with the right force and signals stop traveling. Ria tried to stand. His legs would not obey him. He tried to swing at her with his arm. His arm moved too slowly, like it was pushing through thick mud. Panic began to replace the confusion in his eyes. This is your last chance, May said. Ye now call for the Instructor to stop the match. I have no desire to hurt you more than I already have. For a moment it seemed like he might listen. The fear on his face was genuine. He understood now that something had gone terribly wrong with his easy victory, but pride was stronger than fear. He opened his mouth and screamed in rage. He pushed himself up through sheer willpower, his partially numbed legs shaking beneath him. He raised his clawed hand and brought it down toward her head with all the Strength he had left, May stepped inside. The strike, she caught his wrist with one hand and twisted. The claw passed harmlessly over her shoulder. Her other hand came up and touched his throat. Touch was gentle, almost tender. Va froze, his eyes went wide, his mouth open, but no sound came out. Slowly, terribly, he toppled backward and hit the floor with a crash that echoed through the silent hall. He lay there, staring at the ceiling. His chest moved in tiny, shallow breaths. His arms and legs did not move at all. Instructor Ven finally rushed forward. "What have you done?" May looked up at him. There was no anger in her face, no triumph, just quiet weariness that seemed much older than 17 years. "I stopped the fight," she said. "Since you would not." She turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted before her in silence. No one tried to stop her. No one said a word. Behind her, Rhea lay paralyzed on the training floor, making small clicking sounds of pure animal terror. The fight had lasted less than 4 minutes. It had changed everything. The medical center was chaos. Doctors from 3 different species surrounded the diagnostic bed, where Rhea lay, still unable to move. Scanning equipment hummed and beeped. Holographic displays showed images of his nervous system with large sections highlighted in red. "I do not understand," it said. The chief medical officer, a Thessan female with silver skin and worried eyes. "The nerve damage is precise, too precise. Each disruption occurred at exactly the right point to disable function without causing permanent harm." "Will he recover?" asked Administrator Korth. He was ancient, even by Korvathi standards, the highest authority at the academy. His forearms were folded across his chest as he studied the displays. "Yes, probably. The paralysis should fade within hours. Motor control will return within a day or 2. The doctor hesitated. "But if those strikes had been slightly stronger, we would be discussing funeral arrangements." Kor turned to Instructor Ven, who stood in the corner trying to make himself small. "Explain." Bren had spent the last hour answering questions. His answers had not satisfied anyone. The human student requested to decline the match. "I refused. Standard protocol requires all students to participate in training exercises." The human student was half the size of her opponent. "Size is not grounds for exemption. We have had mismatched sparring partners before. Those mismatched partners were not trying to kill each other." Kororas's voice was cold. "I reviewed the recording. Bria attempted lethal strikes at least 6 times. You did nothing." Bren said nothing. There was nothing he could say. "You are suspended pending full investigation. Remove yourself from this facility immediately." Bren left without argument. He had been a warrior for 50 years. He knew when a battle was lost. Kor turned back to the medical displays. Rhea's father had already sent 3 furious messages demanding justice. The Soren family wanted the human girl expelled, arrested, and extradited to space for trial. They were calling it assault, attempted murder, and act of war against their noble house. But the recording told a different story. Korth had watched it 7 times. Now he had watched the human girl asked to decline. He had watched her avoid every attack without striking back. He had watched her warn Bria to yield before she finally disabled him, and he had watched Instructor Ven stand by and do nothing while a student tried to commit murder in his training hall. The evidence was clear. The human had acted in self-defense. she had shown more restraint than anyone could reasonably expect, and when she finally struck, she had done so with a precision that bordered on impossible. His personal communicator buzzed, a message from the Coalition Medical Examiner's office. He opened it and read carefully. The examiner had analyzed the recording, frame by frame. Her conclusion was troubling. The human had struck 3 times in less than 4 seconds. Each strike had targeted a specific nerve cluster with millimeter precision. The angle and force of each strike had been calculated to cause maximum incapacitation with minimum permanent damage. A slightly different angle on any of the 3 would have killed Rhea instantly. In other words, the human had chosen not to kill him 3 separate times in the space of a few heartbeats. Kor had fought in wars. He had trained with the finest warriors in the Coalition. He had never seen anyone demonstrate that level of control under pressure. Not even the legendary Korvathi blade masters could match it. His communicator buzzed again. This time, it was a meeting request from the human embassy. He accepted and walked to the conference room. 3 humans were waiting for him, 2 men and 1 woman, all dressed in the plain gray suits that human diplomats seemed to favor. The woman spoke first. Administrator Kor, thank you for meeting with us. I am Ambassador Chen. These are my advisors. Chen, the same family name as the student. Koreth filed that information away for later. I assume you are here about the incident. We are. Ambassador Chen gestured to a chair. Please sit. This conversation may take some time. Koreth sat. The ambassador remained standing. First, let me be clear about our position. Mei Chen acted in lawful self-defense. She violated no rules. She caused no permanent harm. If the Soren family wishes to pursue legal action, they will find the Coalition courts unsympathetic. I understand the recording supports that conclusion. Good. The ambassador paused, but there is something else you should know. Something that will help you understand what happened today. She touched the control on the table. A holographic display appeared showing personnel files, 3 human faces, 3 names. McCann was one of them. The other 2 were the male human students at the academy. These are the 3 humans currently enrolled at your institution. Do you know how they were selected? Kor shook his head. The selection process was extremely competitive. Over 15,000 humans applied. We tested them for intelligence, adaptability, psychological stability, and physical capability. The ambassador zoomed in on one of the files. David Park scored highest in physical combat assessment. He holds championship titles in 3 martial arts. His reaction time is in the top 1% of all humans tested. She moved to the second file. James Okonkwo scored second highest. Former military family. His grandmother was Special Forces. His father was Special Forces. He has been training in combat since he was 4 years old. She moved to the third file. Mei Chen's file. Mei scored lowest of the 3 in physical combat assessment. Her training was informal. Her reaction time is merely average by human standards. Kor felt something cold settle in his stomach. You are saying you did not send your best fighters? I'm saying we specifically avoided sending our best fighters. The ambassador's eyes were hard. Administrator, the Coalition asked humanity to send students who could integrate peacefully into the academy environment. We took that request seriously. David and James are both capable of killing most species. Bare-handed, their reflexes are trained. For lethal response, we could not risk putting them in situations where they might accidentally kill a classmate, and Mei Chen Mei was chosen partly because her combat training was minimal enough that she might show restraint. Ambassador, let that sink in. What you saw today was not a demonstration of human military capability. It was a demonstration of human minimum capability. The weakest fighter we were willing to send. Silence filled the conference room. Cora thought about the recording again. The speed, the precision, the perfect control. He thought about what the ambassador was telling him now. You are saying the other two human students are more dangerous than what I saw today. Significantly more dangerous. David could have killed Rhea before anyone in that hall realized the fight had started. James would have done the same thing May did, but without the warning, without the chance to yield. Ambassador finally sat down. Her expression softened slightly. We do not want violence. Administrator, humanity has had enough violence in its history. We came to the stars hoping to find peace, but we will not be victimized. We will not watch our children be brutalized by bullies while instructors look the other way. The instructor has been suspended. Good, that is a start. Another pause. Korath had many more questions, but one seemed most important. How did she do it? The nerve strikes. I have never seen anything like that. Ambassador Chen smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. Humanity evolved as prey. Administrator, we were not the strongest creatures on our world. We were not the fastest or the toughest. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. Every predator on our planet could kill us easily. So we learned. We studied anatomy. We found the weak points. We developed techniques that allowed a small human to disable a larger opponent through precise application of force rather than overwhelming strength. She stood up again and walked to the window that overlooked the academy grounds. These techniques are thousands of years old. They have names in dozens of human languages. Every human child learns at least the basics. Machen is not special. By human standards, she is simply what humans become when they must survive against creatures bigger and stronger than themselves. Cora sat with that information for a long moment. He had underestimated humanity. The entire coalition had underestimated humanity. They had looked at the small, soft creatures from the primitive planet and assumed weakness. They had not understood that weakness itself had been the teacher. Millions of years of being prey had turned humanity into something far more dangerous than any predator. What do you want from the academy? He finally asked. We want our students to be safe. We want instructors who allow violence against humans to face consequences, and we want the coalition to understand something important. Ambassador Chen turned from the window to face him directly. We are not harmless because we are weak. We are gentle because we choose to be. That choice can be unmade at any moment. She walked toward the door. Her advisors followed. I suggest you share this conversation with the Soren family. It may help them reconsider their demands for justice. She left. Korath remained sitting alone in the conference room for a very long time, thinking about everything he had learned and everything it meant. Somewhere in the academy, McKen sat in her small room and waited. She did not know what would happen next. She only knew that she had done what she had to do, and she would face whatever consequences followed. Her grandmother would have been proud. 3 days after the incident, Reason walked out of the medical center on his own 2 legs. Paralysis had faded exactly as the doctors predicted. His motor control had returned completely. There was no permanent damage to his nervous system. In purely physical terms, he was as healthy as he had been before the fight. But something had changed behind his eyes. The arrogance was gone. The cruel confidence that had made other students fear him had disappeared somewhere on that training floor when he lay helpless and staring at the ceiling. Now when other students looked at him, they did not see a predator. They saw prey that had been caught and released. His followers had scattered. None of them wanted to be associated with a noble who had been humiliated by a human half his size. The students who had once laughed at his jokes now turned away when he approached. The students he had bullied watched him pass with expressions that held no sympathy. His father sent message after message demanding action. The family lawyers prepared documents. The sworn political connections reached out to coalition officials. For 2 days it seemed like the incident would become an interstellar incident. Then someone leaked the recording. It spread across coalition networks. Within hours, millions of beings watched the small human girl avoid every attack without striking back. They watched her warn her opponent to yield. They watched her disable him with 3 precise touches that could have killed him, but did not. They watched the instructor stand by and do nothing. Public opinion turned sharply. The Torthiathans had always been unpopular, remembered as conquerors and slavers before the coalition forced them to change. Now their noble son was shown attacking a student half his size, while an instructor helped. The family found their messages going unanswered. Their political allies suddenly had scheduling conflicts. Their lawyers advised settling quietly. The investigation concluded on the 5th day. Instructor Venn was terminated from the academy staff. He was found to have violated multiple protocols by allowing the match to continue past the point of clear danger. His teaching license was revoked pending review. Vassorn received a formal warning. His use of lethal force techniques in a sparring match was documented in his permanent record. Any future violations would result in immediate expulsion. Mansion was cleared of all wrongdoing. The academy officially acknowledged that she had acted in self-defense with appropriate restraint, but the consequences reached far beyond one academy on one neutral world. Coalition military commanders began requesting information about human combat techniques. Intelligence agencies tried to identify the schools and teachers that had developed such precise methods of disabling opponents. Diplomatic channels buzzed with questions that had never been asked before. Just how dangerous were humans? What else could they do that the coalition did not know about? The human embassy released a carefully worded statement. It explained that humanity had a long history of martial arts development. It mentioned that all humans receive some basic training in self-defense. It did not mention the special forces programs or the classified combat research or the weapons that existed only in sealed vaults on Earth. Some information was better left unshared. On the 6th day, Administrator Korth received a visit from an unexpected guest, Grand Admiral. Thessa commanded the coalition's combined fleet. She was ancient and massive, Corvi female who had fought in more wars. The most species had history. She arrived without ceremony, walking through the academy corridors like she owned them. In a sense she did. Show me, she said when she reached Koror's office. He showed her the recording, the medical reports, the analysis from combat experts across a dozen species. The conclusion that every expert had reached independently. Tesco watched in silence. When it was finished, she sat back and closed all four of her eyes. Do you know why I am here, Administrator? I assume the incident has attracted attention at the highest levels. Attention, Tesco opened her eyes. That is one word for it. I have received 17 requests from fleet commanders asking about human capabilities. I have received 43 requests from planetary defense ministries asking the same thing. The Tothians have filed a formal complaint claiming humanity is hiding military assets. The Tothians seem to have found many things to complain about lately. Indeed, a thin smile crossed Theska's face, but their complaint raises an interesting question. What are humans hiding? Kor had been thinking about this for days. I spoke with the human ambassador. She was quite direct. The student who won the fight is considered average by human standards. The other two human students here are significantly more capable, and the rest of their species. She implied that every human learns at least basic techniques, that their entire civilization is built in the assumption that they must survive against physically superior opponents. Tesca was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thoughtful. The coalition accepted humanity 8 years ago. Do you remember the debate? I remember. Many argued against admission. Humans were too primitive, too violent, too unpredictable. I was one of those who argued against. Thea stood and walked to the window. I had reviewed their history, wars upon wars, weapons designed for mass destruction. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times before they even reached space. I thought accepting them was inviting a predator into our home. And now I wonder if we were wrong in a different way. We assumed humans were dangerous because of their weapons and their wars. We did not consider that their weapons and their wars might be symptoms of something deeper. They were not building those weapons because they enjoyed destruction. They were building them because they expected to face threats they could not defeat any other way. Thea turned back to Corinth. Her expression was troubled. I have commanded soldiers from every species in the coalition. I know how they fight. Tothians rely on strength and intimidation. Korvathi rely on speed and discipline. Vorak rely on numbers and coordination. But humans, she shook her head. Humans assume they will face something stronger, something faster, something that should win, and they prepare accordingly. You find this concerning. I find this terrifying. Tesca sat down again. A species that builds its entire combat philosophy around being the underdog. A species that teaches its children to defeat larger opponents through precision and knowledge. What happens when that species has access to coalition technology? What happens when they can build ships as strong as ours and still retain every technique they developed while being prey? Korith had no answer. The question was beyond his experience I came here to see for myself. Teska continued. I needed to know if this was an isolated incident or something larger. Now I know she stood to leave. The coalition made a mistake with humanity administrator, but not the mistake we thought. What mistake was that? Teska paused at the door. We assumed they needed our protection. We offered them membership because we thought we were helping the weak. Her 4 eyes met his. We were not helping the weak. We were inviting something ancient and patient and very, very dangerous into our alliance, and now we must live with that choice. She left without another word. Kor sat alone in his office as the sun set over the academy grounds. Through his window he could see students moving between buildings, among them, barely visible. The evening light was a small figure walking alone. Clear's throat. Mei Chen, the human girl who had changed everything. He wondered what she was thinking. He wondered if she understood the wave she had created across the entire coalition. He wondered if she cared. Perhaps she did not. Perhaps she had simply done what any human would do when threatened. Perhaps the entire incident was nothing special by human standards. That thought was most terrifying of all. In her small room, McKen finished her evening studies and prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring more classes, more tests, more challenges. She would face them as she had faced everything else. The harassment had stopped completely. No one touched her belongings anymore. No one contaminated her food. Other students nodded to her in hallways and moved aside when she passed. Some even smiled. She did not smile back. She had not wanted fame or fear or respect. She had only wanted to study in peace, but peace she was learning sometimes required force to achieve. That was a lesson humanity had learned long ago on the plains of Earth when they were still learning to walk upright. It was a lesson that had never stopped being true. She turned off her light and slept without dreams. 3 months passed at the Galactic Unity Academy. Seasons changed on Thesson Prime. New students arrived and old students graduated. The incident in the training hall became history, then legend, then something people mentioned in whispers. When conversations turned to humans, McKen continued her studies. She earned high marks in every subject. She participated in training exercises without incident. She made no friends, but she made no enemies either. She existed in a strange space between celebrity and isolation, watched by everyone but approached by few. Fracassorn finished his physical recovery, but never quite recovered in other ways. He walked with a slight limp, now not from May's strikes but from how he had fallen when his legs gave out. The doctors said it was psychosomatic. His body remembered the helplessness even when his nerves did not. He avoided the training hall entirely. He avoided May most of all. When he saw her in hallways, he turned and walked the other way. His followers were gone. His status was gone. His father had stopped sending messages after the legal situation became clear. Vria was alone in ways he had never been alone before. On a cold morning near the end of the 3rd month, Instructor Ven returned to the academy. His suspension had ended. His teaching license had been restored after review. The official position was that he had made errors in judgment but did not deserve permanent consequences. The unofficial position was that his family had connections too. He found May in the library during the evening study period. she was alone at her usual table surrounded by books and holographic displays. She looked up when his shadow fell across her work. "May I sit?" May studied him for a moment, then she nodded. Bren sat across from her. He looked older than he had 3 months ago. There were new lines on his gray face, and something tired in his posture that had not been there before. "I came to speak with you," he said. "I have thought about what happened for many days. I owe you words. You owe me nothing. I owe you truth." Ren folded his 4 hands on the table. "I allowed that match to continue because I wanted to see you broken. I believed your species was weak. I believed humans had somehow fooled the coalition into granting you status you did not deserve. I wanted Rhea to prove this in front of everyone." May listened without expression, clears throat. "I was wrong," Ren continued. "Wrong about what weakness means, wrong about what humanity is, wrong about many things." He paused. "I have spoken with others since then, military officers, diplomats, scholars who study different species. They have taught me things I did not know." "What things?" Ven leaned forward. "They told me that humans evolved as prey, that you were hunted by creatures larger and stronger than you for millions of years, that you survived not by being stronger but by being clever, by learning where to strike, by turning your weakness into something else. That is true. They told me that every human child learns to fight, not because you are violent but because you expect violence. You prepare for enemies you cannot defeat with strength alone." Clear's throat. Ven's voice dropped lower. "They told me that you are not the most dangerous human at this academy, that the others are worse, that you were chosen partly because you might show mercy." "That is also true." Ven sat back. He looked like someone whose entire understanding of the world had been shaken and rebuilt. "I spent 50 years as a warrior," he said slowly. "I trained thousands of students. I thought I understood combat. I thought I understood strength and weakness, but I did not understand humans." May closed the book she had been reading. She folded her hands in a way that mirrored his pose. "You understand something now that you did not understand before. That is growth. My grandmother would say that growth is the only victory that matters. Your grandmother, she taught me the things I used against Rhea. She was very old and very wise. She died 2 years before I came here." May's voice softened slightly. "She used to say that fighting is not about strength, it is about precision, about knowing exactly how much force to use and where to apply it. Anyone can destroy. The skill is in controlling destruction." Bren nodded slowly. "When you disabled Bria, you could have killed him." "Yes, 3 times. In less than 4 seconds. You chose not to." "Yes, why?" May was quiet for a moment. When she answered, her voice was thoughtful. "Killing is easy for humans. Too easy, perhaps. Our history is full of death, wars and murders and accidents and disasters. We have killed more of our own kind than any predator ever killed of us." She looked at Ven directly. "But killing haunts us. We dream about it. We feel guilt and shame and horror even when the killing was necessary. Other species do not seem to feel this as strongly. For us it is a wound that never fully heals." "That sounds like weakness." "Perhaps it is, but perhaps it is also strength." May smiled slightly. "Because we hate killing, we work very hard to find other ways. We develop techniques that disable instead of destroy. We create laws and systems To prevent violence, we teach our children that fighting should be the last choice, not the first. She leaned forward. I could have killed Vera without any effort. In that moment when he grabbed my arm, I saw three paths that led to his death. I chose a fourth path that led to his survival. I chose it because killing him would have damaged something inside me, something that matters more than victory. Ven sat with this for a long time. The library was quiet around them. Other students had noticed the conversation but kept their distance. I understand now, Ven finally said, or I begin to understand. Your species is not gentle because you are weak. You are gentle because you must be, because the alternative is too terrible to accept. Yes, May nodded. Humans who embrace violence without restraint become monsters. We have seen this too many times in our history. So we build restraints, we teach control. We make gentleness a choice that must be made again and again every day. And when the choice becomes too hard, when restraint fails, May's expression became very still. Then you see what humanity is capable of when we stop being gentle. It is not something anyone should wish to see. The conversation ended there. Ren stood and nodded to her with something that might have been respect. Then he walked away and did not look back. May returned to her studies, but a few minutes later she was interrupted again. A young Tothian stood nervously at the edge of her table. He was smaller than most of his kind, with pale green scales and eyes that darted away when she looked at him directly. She recognized him. He had been one of Ria's targets before she arrived, one of the students who had their food taken and their belongings broken. Yes, she said. The young Tothian swallowed visibly. I am sorry to disturb you. I know you probably want to be left alone. Everyone says you prefer to be alone, but I wanted to ask you something, and I could not find the courage until now. May waited. Would you teach me? Words came out in a rush. Not to fight like you fight. I know that takes years, and I am not human and probably could not learn anyway, but maybe just some basics. How to move, how to avoid being grabbed, how to not be so afraid all the time. He looked down at his feet. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. I am tired of being afraid. May studied him for a long moment. She thought about everything that had happened since she arrived at the academy, the hatred and the harassment in the fight that changed everything. She thought about what her grandmother had taught her and what it meant to pass that teaching on. Then she moved the books to one side of her table and made room beside her. Sit, she said. Tell me your name. The young Tara sat down with a look of disbelief and growing hope. My name is Kravik. Thank you so much. Do not thank me yet. This will be difficult. You will want to quit many times. I will not quit. We will see. May opened a new display and began sketching the basic principles she would teach him. First, you must understand that fighting is not about being stronger than your enemy. It is about knowing yourself, your limitations, your capabilities, what you are willing to do and what you are not willing to do. I understand. No, you do not understand yet, but you will. Across the library, students watch the strange scene. A human teaching a Tothian, a former victim helping another former victim. It was not what anyone expected, but then humans had a way of doing unexpected things. Academy's official incident report remained classified for many years, but stories spread anyway, not stories about human strength or speed or ferocity. Stories about something else entirely. Stories about a species that measured. Force infractions that treated. Violence as a scalpel rather than a hammer that chose mercy not because it was easy but because it was hard. The galaxy had assumed humanity was harmless. Because they were gentle, it was beginning to understand they were gentle. Because they were trying very hard to be. And that made all the